Welcome to Metamorphosis, Initiations, Thresholds, and the Alchemy of Becoming. So, this is a presentation that Kathleen and I are giving today, and we're doing it at the end of listening to all of the conversations that we've had with our speakers. So, it's this exciting summary of the gifts of the conversations where we explore what happens when we actually have capacity to be in the threshold of becoming, to be with what's emerging without needing to necessarily pin it down or have it make sense until it's fully taken form. I want to introduce my co weaver. I feel incredibly grateful and excessively lucky that I get to create this summit with Kathleen because she is a woman so generous of heart, so living joy. So let me tell you about Kathleen. She's a quantum seamstress, a shadow alchemist, and she guides others into communion with their inner genius to unravel old imprints and reclaim the magic and power encoded in their DNA. Over the past 13 years, Kathleen has been a devoted apprentice of the universe, absolutely. She infuses bioresonance frequency medicine, esoteric hypnotherapy, astrology, channeling, and ceremony into sacred offerings and teachings. As a Gene Keys guide, she leads deep immersions where shadows are honored as sacred thresholds, and she holds space for the underworld of the psyche to be witnessed through the eyes of compassion, reverence, and love. Kathleen is the creator of two global summits. Her first summit, the Cauldron of the Quantum Field and Metamorphosis, this one, and she's deeply passionate about amplifying the missions of visionaries and soulpreneurs through her platform, The Voice of the Star Weaver. And last but not least, Kathleen is a multi-galactic course manager for the Global School for Quantum Evolution, the revolutionary and consciousness accelerating donation-based platform created by Jocelyn Starfeather.
Oh, dear Vive, it feels like a wash, like a bath of honey nectar to just receive your love through reading, my bio, but just this witnessing of each other as we came together and the gifts that we bring that complement each other because we're both different beings, but we share the same thread and love of magic. And I just want to presence Vive as a dream maestro, the way that she dreams and then unpacks them and sees others' dreams and like makes them alive as well. And just your grounding, anchored presence has held me through all of these 24 interviews that we have done. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit more of Vive. But Vive Oldham is a somatic practitioner, mother circle facilitator, artist, mum, auntie, and pleasure activist. Her practice is guided by the work of Marion Dunlea's body dreaming and the treatment of developmental trauma, an embodied therapeutic approach which centers the organic intelligence of a body. Through her training and lived experience, she helps women grow the capacity to stay present to both friction and pleasure. She orients to the idea that pleasure isn't an escape from difficulty, but a resource that allows us to meet activation, thresholds, and change with groundedness and creativity. She is a creator of tiny rituals of body-led practice that aligns with emerging science of neuroaesthetics and the art of tending the soul, inspired by the work of Thomas More. And through small, sensory, creative acts, these rituals help women reconnect with what brings them to life, gently revealing their unique gifts, what mythologist Michael Meade calls our genius. And her work blends structure and tenderness to support capacity building, creative expression, and meaningful embodied change. Scrumptious.
Thank you, Kathleen. It is scrumptious, and it has been, and we talk about this throughout the interviews. What an absolute joy it is to be in these conversations together with the two of us.
Mm.
That there is support when we needed support, and there is resonance, and then there are the ideas that kind of appear between us at the same time. But we thought we might just start by kind of talking about, or each taking an opportunity to talk about why this, why metamorphosis, and why now. And Kathleen, I wondered if you might just tell us a little bit about, your why. And I know we came together with a why in the
Mm.
end, but there was this beautiful process that we went through, a back and forthing process. So even in creating the summit was born in its own way, emergent way, through a dance of ideas and conversations and oh yeah, that resonates or no, that doesn't resonate. So could you tell us a little bit about things that have kind of inspired you to be in these conversations?
Yes, absolutely. And I love that you bring up the back and forth, Vive, because the way that metamorphosis emerged, the name, the initiations, thresholds, and the alchemy of becoming, this was birthed from all of these ideas and inspirations that Vive and I had around coming together and creating a summit. And we knew we wanted to create one together. We journeyed last year with Jocelyn Starfeather through creating our own summits and just felt this soul calling to come together in this way. And so I just want to mention here as well, it's so beautiful that you'll see each way each speaker has taken metamorphosis, initiation thresholds, and alchemy of becoming and like really like magically brought their own unique flavors and wisdoms that there's so many unique teachings throughout the summit, but they're all woven together, all interconnected. Each summit will have gems from this speaker and that speaker, and it's just this beautiful cauldron. But yes, my inspiration for this very important theme, well, I would love to mention Barbara Hand Clow. We actually invited her to be in the summit, and she said she would have loved to have been here, but she's going through a very important transit, which is her Uranus return. And with Uranus, there comes these lightning bolts that and she's taking the time right now to be with the lightning bolts that she needs to, so she can keep on inspiring us. And so when I was in my 30s, I picked up this book, Astrology and the Rising of Kundalini. Now, this was before perimenopause and menopause was the algorithm for me. I was 30s, not thinking about it. But reading this book really made me come alive with inquiry of the different transitions that we go through in our life. So I'm just going to speak to three that Barbara speaks to. She speaks about there's so many transits, but we're just going to speak to three today. So, of course, many of us are very familiar with our Saturn return, which takes place just before our 30s. So, kind of between the ages of 27 to 30, we go for a Saturn return. And this is where, whether we're aware of it, this transit or not, we have a major circling of what is important and what we need, essentially because Saturn is coming here to really either enhance or take us kicking and screaming into building a future that serves us, our soul, our community, our loved ones, and our humanity. So we have that very important transit, and that's when I had my dark night of a soul, which actually set me on the path to where we are today. Then we have this other really important transit, which takes place between kind of 40 and 44. And this is called your Uranus opposition. And this has been such a major catalyst for this summit because obviously through this decade and beyond, there's so many health crises and symptoms and stuff that are normalized or pathologized, like we have spoken about through many. And it's become the norm to be like, oh, this is just a shit show and this is the way it's going to be. And that's just suck it up, buttercup, essentially. But no, as apprentice of the universe, I know and that the planets always have our back. And so what Barbara speaks to is Uranus opposition is like that is the midlife crisis of when, you know, women experience maybe these hot flashes and other symptoms, and men may take off and have an affair and buy a sports car. But it's what is actually happening is we are getting this Uranus, the planet of lightning bolts and electricity, and here to like shake things up, liberate our nervous system, comes and crosses back and forth 3 times over opposite of where Uranus was when we were born. And so what happens is this is activating our Kundalini, which is a subtle energy, activating her to rise up through our chakras. And then so that she can rise up through our chakras and come up through our crown, connect us in with the universe. And what happens when we have a lot of these symptoms around this decade is that the Kundalini is moving through our chakras, and this energy can't essentially move because we have all this stuck emotional trauma or unresolved stuff that's there. And especially with women, this can be around the throat and using your voice. For men, it's the heart. And then the third transit that she speaks to is a Chiron return, which is around the age 50. And so just really wanted to speak to this because it's so empowering to know that this is happening for a reason, because then you can work with it. And because if we do not work with this immense blessing and potential that we have with the planets in this around this when we're having our Uranus opposition, then we can really have a health crisis or another big crisis. We have our Chiron return. So that was a big inspiration. And I just really want to give such a shout out to Barbara Hahn Clow for her wisdoms. And I will put this book in the show notes so you can go and read it yourself. And then the other inspiration is, of course, Other Places You'll Go by Dr. Zeus, because this is for young kids and big kids and everyone, because this book literally takes you on a journey to up mountains and down hills, into slumps, into the waiting space, the liminal space, the lonely spaces. But then at the end, Dr. Zeus, in these very wise words, says, so be your name Buxton or Bixby or Bray or Mordecai, Alivan, Alan O'Shea. You're off to great places. Today is your day. Your mountain is waiting, so get on your way. This book just shows you that, yes, there are going to be many molehills and down dales, and this is really what these initiations and thresholds are. But just knowing that there's going to be a light at the end of a tunnel. And so Vive and I have just been really blessed to come together in this way with all of these wisdom keepers and threshold walkers and visionaries, and to really just create this resource toolkit, this cauldron of elixirs that can help you if you're having a dark night of a soul, or if you are feeling like you're down in that slump and don't know how to get out, that there's rites and rituals or just guides or just your body to help you. So that those have been my inspirations. And also just one more shout out, of course, to the Gene Keys and Richard Rudd, and who brought in the Gene Keys, and Rosie Aronson and the Wisdom Keepers, because these have really been, this body of love and holy wisdom has really enabled myself to go and tap into, you know, the shadows in my own psyche, and how I can work with these shadows to cultivate them into vitality and purpose, and using my voice, which was a very, very, very big like, visibility was a very big part of my journey. And Viv and I were just joking, actually, not really joking. Well, we can laugh about it now, but this time, well, last year when I did my summit, The Cauldron of a Quantum Field, I did a live presentation, and then it was a lady who was actually messaging me, being really mean. And so after that presentation, I got off and I just burst into tears. And I was shaking, but it was liberating to go through that experience and actually move that stuck energy and trauma and unhealed stuff out so I could be sitting here today. So,
And I'm going to pick up that thread, Kathleen, because there's something about um, capacity to be in life that we're talking about with everybody in this summit, isn't there? And that's a place where I'm coming from, a part of my why, part of what brought me into kind of fascination and curiosity with metamorphosis is like what gives me capacity to be in life, not avoiding, not masochistic, so not kind of seeking out or saying, everything's going to be difficult, but actually being able to be with what is. And then, like you said, able to kind of zoom out. And this is where the mythic and archetypal way of seeing the world. So whether it's with the gene keys or whether it's with stories, so even the stories of the wisdom keepers that we talk about with Rosie, that you've talked about as well. It's these bigger perspectives, even understanding that from a physiological perspective, like what Suzanne talked about, what Kimberly Ann talked about, what Jasmine talks about, as you guys will find out as you listen to the conversations, is that the body has this natural intelligence that menopause is its own physiological initiation, its own physiological kind of alchemical change, and it's for a bigger purpose, for culture, for community, that we, like Kimberly says, take our place in this turnstile from maiden, mother, in Marion Woodman's view of the world, she has virgin and then crone. So something about capacity to be with what's emerging, and I guess that has been the gift that the training that I've done have been doing with Marion Dunlea and body dreaming has given me. I really notice that there is something that comes alive when we are able to be with our dreams, we're able to be with the images that come in, we're able to be in a story, and we're able to be affected by those things without needing to make logical, practical sense of it straight away, but still being able to be moved by it. Like for me, that is the experience of being human, is that I can be moved by things, but they don't necessarily overwhelm me. So I can be scared, I can be afraid, I can be giving a live talk and somebody being like, this sucks. And I can be in that and I can hold that that is somebody's perspective that they're giving me as I'm doing that. And I can also kind of have this psycho, spiritual, physical capacity, groundedness to be okay at the same time in some way. That for me is like the exciting thing that happens when we come into a generative relationship with change. And as it has been said in like all of the interviews, change is the most natural thing. It's in nature. It's happening all around us. It's really normal for our bodies to change, and in some ways, it's this kind of psychological, perhaps cultural obsession with not changing, with things staying still in some way, where we really get ourselves into a bit of a pickle, a bit of a muddle. And I suppose too, something that I feel that we share, Kathleen, is like the longing, the longing to bring back the sacred, the longing to bring back and I think immediately of something that Kato said in his interview, like how we bring spontaneity and mystery and kind of the unexpected into moments to bring a sense of sort of sacredness in these rites of passage. So for me, a lot of the inspiration is not just for me and my own body and my own lived experience, but what am I bringing to the lives of my kids? Like, how are we going to mark those key points in life where they're moving, they're younger, but where they're moving from into adolescence and then into adulthood, or into womanhood. And so, yeah, I feel driven by a kind of a longing to find a way because I need to reconnect to my ancestral heritage. But also, I think there's an element of emergence in creating our own sacredness that
Mm.
we discovered through these conversations too, our own sacredness and our own way of creating ritual in the places that we live, in relationship to the places that we live, like the physical land that we're living on, and our brothers and sisters like Mark, John, and Erica talked about, like and Puma, our brothers and sisters that are the plants and the animals around us, because there's a sense that we can kind of belong as we come into relationship with where we are. And I think that's outwardly and inwardly. And I'll just say one more thing that is, it's so beautiful that Kathleen brought in that book, Oh, the Places We'll Go, because I remember that my daughter, who's 9 today, she was given that when she left kindy. And
Mm.
it makes me emotional just thinking about reading that book with her, because it's like, wow, what a gift to get that, to be reading that. And thank you, Dr. Zeus, but to be reading that at this, and that was a really pivotal moment, um, moving from, actually, it was pre-primary, I think, into big school, to be moving at places, to be moving into new friendship groups, and to just be setting this tone of the undulations like you talked about. So that's such a beautiful example of a way that we can start to come into relationship with something that is bigger than just me, just I, and my experience. And I think that interconnectedness and the relationships that we have with place and with people and with the invisible world, the energetics, like that is part of the gift that is in these conversations, and that buoys me and gives me capacity, and I hope to share that with everyone. So that is part of my why.
Oh, beautiful, Vive. And I love that. Yeah, there's been tears that have been shed in these interviews because it's real. It's authentic, it's rich, it's real, and the tears are healing. And I just want to go back to that initiation that I went through with visibility. Well, that was I put myself out there on invisibility, and I took that risk of that happening. So that was something, that an action that I took, and that was something that happened that I was able to catalyze and find a gift from. But we're going to have initiations whether we put ourselves out there or not. And this is also, this summit is holding the space for those initiations that just keep coming and coming and coming. And this is really important as well, because our intention and highest hope for this is that through the conversations you'll be able to feel a glimmer, or see or feel something that resonates or speaks to you from these wonderful beings who are just showing up through and never walked journeys themselves. Everyone here has had this journey, and so we're not here to like bypass with toxic positivity anybody's experiences, but just being able to like wrap you in love in this cocoon of hope and inspiration, because this is how we move forward as a humanity, and for our beautiful planet and for the universe. And just, I'm gonna pass the ball back to V, because we love dancing. But yeah, just those initiations are going to come because we are connected to the universe. We are connected to everything. And so it's like, how can we be in our power? How can we stay grounded? How can we be in that? goo, which is what will happen when we're going, as Susan Weed eloquently and powerfully puts it, when we go through menopause as women, like you literally caterpillar mounts down. Like, how can we be in all that with permission to be whatever we are going to be, but to know that there's a light at the end of a tunnel. And to quote Susan Weed as well, is that she tells you to get a butterfly collection, which is those people who can inspire you, who have been through what you're going through and come out, and they're flying their unique butterfly flag, you know? So there's just so many pathways to take in this summit, but they all lead back to the main destination, is that we have the power within us, and we are so held and loved if we can take that sacred pause to be in the liminal space.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to echo you there about the butterflies, like to have um to have in front of you as that change is happening, and that change for women, which has been so pathologized, all the sort of physiological changes have been pathologized, but to have in front of you, like, okay, this is a reconfiguration, a reorganization of so much of me, but at the end I can see, wow, this is what I could be like at 80. And not trying to stay in maiden, and not trying to keep things still or get back to how I used to be, but to see, oh, this is that idea of having a generative relationship with change. But you talked about the liminal spaces, so we thought we might just touch on what we mean when we're talking about the middle realm or the liminal, or that place, which Kathleen has started to talk about, because it's that place with, if we're working with the caterpillar inside the cocoon, where the caterpillar is melting down and the butterfly is becoming. And as many of the speakers have talked about, like those uh, the DNA, I think that's the genes, are fighting each other. There's kind of like a fight. So even understanding that in metamorphosis, it's not always a gentle, maybe it's never necessarily a gentle kind of process. Like there's something that is ending and there's something that is beginning, and it's happening at the same time. Hence why we, like Anna talked about in her interview, like there's a need for resourcing to come in, to be in this cocoon, in what's happening there, and that there is an intelligence to the action that's happening in there. And
Mm.
like Kathleen, you've talked about, there's a gift, there's something emerging, even if we don't quite understand what that is to begin with.
Mm. Yes, that mystery that so many of our speakers talk about, which is that womb space. It is the unknown. It is what it means, the mystery, the unknown. But it's like when we can be not trying to force, or not trying to halt, or not trying to control the outcome, what can unfold is more magical than anything that we could ever have dreamed possible, ever dreamed possible. And I just really also wanted to just mention how important these conversations have been, like you said, for our children, like bringing back like these rites of passage, which all the ancients and indigenous cultures knew was essential in creating this beautiful roadmap for our children to go and do live into their destiny, and even with the challenges, and also the conversations around what each generation is bringing to the world as we go forward. And I'm doing a little bit of a dance here, but I just also wanted to come back as well as that when Vive mentioned the sacred, there's a longing within us to come home to the sacred, and that's why reach for the bottles or the cigarettes or or the mind altering drugs. It's that craving to return to the mystery, to
Mm.
be with the sacred, to be with a ritual. It's this yearning, and we just have kind of been conditioned or or suppressed to kind of find it outside ourselves. So it's like that invitation is the mystery is in here. She's out here, she's everywhere.
Mm.
And she's more exquisite than you could ever have ever dreamed.
And there's that thematic thread that Kathleen and I keep talking about because there are so many threads that have appeared spontaneously in these conversations, whether it's um, turning, like lifting up the roots of a tree to see what is beneath that, or turning over a rock to see what's beneath that, whether it's the bees and the gold and the nectar. And you're going to find all of these as you listen to the conversations. Even the lightning bolt that you mentioned at the beginning, Kathleen, I thought, wow, thinking about Ema talking about the Celtic and Irish goddesses. And I can't remember, Clocta, I think was her name, with the light, the staff, the lightning bolt. And so it's
And
incredible.
Puma literally got
Oh, hit by lightning.
by lightning. Yes. So
So
yeah.
So when we come into these conversations where we're willing to be with the mystery, to be in the mystery without needing to make kind of sense of it too quickly, what we've noticed is there's an energy and a field, and there are threads that emerge all by themselves that have something to offer us.
Mm,
You know, even that in itself, like I'm noticing how alive that makes me feel. And I think as we become more adult in culture, what happens is we lose touch with that imaginative, that imagination, the imaginal world. We kind of start to need to have the plan. We need to know where we're going. And there's absolute benefit to structure and plans. So I'm not saying abandon all plans, but I think it's to be holding that with also the skill of emergence, and that is kind of maybe that it's not a skill, it's actually just something that's dormant within us that needs to be reawoken, which makes me think about our chat with Kelly and that and the thematics of, and I can't remember the quote, which is going to kill me, but it was around a fear and awakening, and that thinks makes me think about Kada talking about running away from death and then only to arrive with death, or the brushing up against the sacred, which is this brushing up against aliveness, trying to bring ourselves back to life by taking ourselves to edges and to thresholds. And I really believe that is what we are hoping to gift you all in these conversations and in the future things that Kathleen and I do together is like, how do we remember to be alive, to bring ourselves, to be in connection with what brings us to life, what we love, what animates us, because that has a way of then affecting everything else in our lives, including our kids and the places that we live and the communities that we're in.
and that bee, and I always, when you say bee, it's that bee, like that bee, bringing in the vibration of the bee, the nectar of how we can cross, how each of these conversations are cross-pollinating and enriching each other and forcing each other as we go forward. And so I'd love to just invite you, Vive, to talk about like, is there an experience throughout any of these interviews that kind of evoked, like, did something evoke in you when you like were receiving these transmissions?
So many that if I sat here and I told you all of them, people would get really bored. And but I want to just mention something because you made me think of it as you were talking about the bee. Because Kathleen often talks about humming, like when she's listening, she's often on mute, whereas I tend to nod vigorously, and Kathleen will hum in
Mm.
response. So she's on mute, so you're not always hearing that. But something that I wanted to share with everyone was and it came up again, I think, last night in our interview with Kelly, was resonance. And even when you were talking about the stuckness or the feeling of, like, I would often get very flushed in my face when I had to do public speak. And last year I participated in a local theatre show, and I had this experience, which I hadn't had, I don't think, ever, of singing and making a sound that filled like my entire body, where my whole being felt resonant. And I realized that that's what singing was all about. And
Mm.
that it had nothing to do with performance, even though I was performing at the time. But it was so physically filling and resonant and beautiful that I almost burst into tears, which would have been really inappropriate and not within my character. But it's part of how I felt through these various moments, listening to people speak. I know it happened when we were listening to Puma speak, and we were talking about these important rites of passage for children, and also bringing children being seen and welcomed back after initiation into adulthood for their gifts. So their
Mm.
gifts, which also came up in the conversations with Kada and with Taria, like how what happens in our bodies, what's evoked in our bodies, and I'm super curious to hear from you too, Kathleen, but what happens in our bodies when we notice something is being evoked, when there's some kind of response that we can't quite make sense of, but we know we've been affected.
Mm.
And I wonder also for you, I mean, there were so many for me, but I wonder for you, like perhaps a couple of times where you really notice that through these conversations.
Yeah, just following that thread and coming to Taria's interview where we talk about the importance of the return. So you go away on this pilgrimage or a rite, and like you said, with Puma, the children are welcomed back. But so many of us go through a threshold or go through, like, go on this journey, and then it's not witnessed. Like, it's we don't sit around a bonfire and tell the story and share, and people don't receive the medicine, and we don't receive that medicine back. And that just makes I feel the tears. I feel this like weight of, oh, there's so much been lost here through us not as a species, like honoring the journeys that what we go through as individuals. And I just feel, yeah, that weight comes down. But then through having these empowering conversations, it's like Viv said, I hum. I'm like, like it's, oh my gosh, I hum. So I'm muted in a lot of interviews, and maybe in some of them not, you're not, so you'll get to experience my hum. And it's like this heart expansion comes as you receive. And like just with Kelly Hunter, and she's talking about liminal space and through the quantum field, and you just feel this love potential. So as you can see, I'm moving my hands. It's like this, like Vive said, the resonance. You can feel the energy, and it as you feel the energy, as you feel these transmissions and these interviews reverberate, this actually moves energy. And Viv and I would come off our interviews and be buzzing. And many of our interviews were at 2 a.m. or 1 a.m. in the morning, or Viv's been a 4 a.m. queen, and we'd come off these calls and be absolutely buzzing, like with Kathy Forrest takes us through this incredible meditation. So it's what we're inviting you as you listen is to, like, notice, are you feeling this somewhere in the body? Is there a sensation? Like, do you feel yourself being, like, leaning forward or leaning back? Like, does this actually triggering you? And what do you need to
Mm.
self-care. Like, what do you need? I think that is the invitation that so many of us, when we're rushing through this modern rat race, is that we don't have the time, or we don't take the time because we don't think we have the time. But time creates time. It's like this is an important message of metamorphosis is how permission to stay in that space long enough to see what will unfold, even if that is 5 minutes a day of just going and sitting outside with the birds, or just that 5 minute break where, and if you live in a city where you just connect with that tree you can see through the window, it's like this is all important to take what you need. Ask
Yeah.
yourself, what do you need? That's
Yeah.
that's what's a missing part as
Yeah,
well.
like Kathleen's saying, it's the resourcing. And like Anna talked about in her with the milkweed and the caterpillar, like the resourcing is an incredibly important part of actually having capacity to be in emergence. And then when we have the capacity to be in emergence, then you get to have these amazing conversations like we did on this summit where speakers get off and they're like, that was fun. Like Kathleen and I were celebrating how many of the speakers enjoyed being in the dance. And of course, we had some structure to the questions, but also we allowed ourselves to notice what was happening in us, which is that attunement and that resonance that Kathleen is talking about. And what happens when we have the ability to notice what's happening in us and to also be with what's emerging. And it makes me think then of something that Kelly was talking about and other people have talked about around potential and possibility and what it's like to kind of, and not in a out there kind of way, but actually in potential and possibility emerging from within us, from the intelligence of our own bodies and our souls and our imaginations.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, and that really makes me think about our talk of Jasmine and our moon blood and how powerful this life force energy is as a gift. But just like menopause is hijacked by hormone replacement, and so especially, that our sacred moon blood has been something to be um like something icky, something to be ashamed of. But it's like I was really invited through your sharing of this innate intelligence of our bodies to know what they are doing, that there is nothing wrong with us. But if we do have these symptoms, it's like, how can we have that compassion and tenderness
Mm.
to kind of listen and to just start noticing of what is our body trying to tell us? And do we need to reach out to someone to support us through this? And so we have
Mm.
so many incredible elders, butterflies throughout the summit. People who have been there, not your story, their own story, but they have some gems to kind of help you follow
Yeah.
find your way along the path.
Yeah, where you can find yourself perhaps in their story and you can understand yourself from somebody else's lived experience, but also from the mythic perspective, this kind of bigger, wider, and even into the cosmology and the astrology and the gene keys, all of these ways that we can kind of zoom out and come to understand, what's happening in the here and now. So we just wanted to pause here and just to take a moment for you to notice what's happening in your own body, to notice perhaps moments throughout this conversation or this presentation that Kathleen and I have been doing, like what things kind of hooked you that you kind of like went, oh, that's interesting, or like Kathleen was saying, oh, ooh, like kind of you were moving back from, just to notice, just to give yourself a few moments to kind of notice what is present. And maybe that's in a sensation kind of a way, or maybe that it reminded you of a story or an experience that you've had, because that's going to kind of take us now into um, our free gift and what we're offering for everyone off when the summit finishes. And Kathleen, I'm wondering if you want to introduce it or you want me to introduce it. I'm happy to do it if you like.
I'm kind of just sitting here, hmm, just noticing. Can you please share the gift?
Mm. Yeah. So we talked about this a bit throughout the presentation, but the free class that Kathleen and I are running is really a combination of the skills and lived experience that we both have. So Kathleen is a quantum seamstress and an expert in the gene keys and a shadow alchemist.
Not an expert because
Sorry, a
if
guide.
ever it's just this rabbit hole of exquisiteness that you just keep diving into. But I am just a passionate um, lover of the gene keys, and yeah,
Thank
just a
you.
present
Thank
that.
you for that correction, Kathleen. And then from my perspective, so working with the body, the soma, and the psyche and the soul, and the dream, the dreams that come in, and image and movement, like Kathleen was saying about moving her hands. So how we can use these doorways, these portals to wake up the sacred in a way that is tapping into our own body's unique intelligence. So the class is called Waking Up the Sacred: Dreams, Rituals, and the Natural World. Because for us, they have been ways in to coming into relationship with what is sacred. And part of coming into relationship with what is sacred is attunement, like Kathleen and I have been talking about. So, what's happening in me when I am relating with these different things, with this person or with this I've got a prickly pear cactus outside my window that I love dearly and have conversations with, or maybe it's your pet, maybe it's a piece of artwork that's hanging in your house, or the color of a wall that you painted in your house. So, how are these things around me that I'm in relationship to? And do I have consciousness around being in relationship to those things? How do I bring more consciousness to those relationships to awaken this sense of the sacred within me? And so in that class, we're going to be talking about that and how we do that through our relationships, how we do that through the body, and how we do that in dreams. And we'll even do a demo of embodied dream work. Yeah.
And yeah, it will just be such an honor for you to come into this beautiful gathering with us, and we'll be able to see all your wonderful faces as well. And just as you were speaking, I was just so reminded of Maria Isabel's incredible interview as well, because she really shows us of how to connect in with the soul of our homes. Like, and like you just mentioned, Vive, we have these resources like the milkweed for the caterpillar all around us that we don't need to go on a big outward journey. Like, we have these things that are just maybe even wanting to connect and speak to us all around us. So yeah, that it's just been such an honor to experience this through Vive and Mind's dance and through our friendship and sisterhood. And so we really would love to invite you into that yumminess too.
Mm. Yeah. And like I mentioned on a number of interviews, how healing it is to be in this friendship, this relationship, and this co creation with Kathleen, to understand that there are ways that we can create things. Like
Mm.
in many ways, creating this summit together has been, like we say, an emergent process, which makes me think of Rosie and her creativity, this kind of like one little piece revealing itself one at a time. And even Kim said it, if we knew, Kim Marie said it, if we knew the way from the beginning, we might not ever take the first step. And so, what a gift it is to be able to trust, because that word came into while we were speaking, to trust, to have capacity for, and to be in what's emerging, because then you get to do amazing things like create a summit on metamorphosis, like we have. And we just wish and hope that you can be with what is emerging for you and that this helps to resource you in your own process.
And just as we close off this little honey hive today, just of such a thank you to each and every one of our speakers for inspiring us. We put the call out to each speaker with a prayer, a wish and a prayer, and for everyone to respond and to just take metamorphosis and run with it beyond our wildest dreams. Perdita Finn, she really speaks about the magic of our loved ones behind the realms. And so I just wanted to kind of finish with this of each before each interview. Vive and I have called upon the guides who wanted to show up, and it was so interesting. We had Anzac weekend, which is a celebrate no, not a, well, a celebration and honoring and a witnessing of our Australian and New Zealand soldiers who fought in the war. And it was so interesting around, we had an interview around that time, and our grandfathers really came in strong. So, and also the grandmothers who had been in the war as well. So it's like, as you experience the interviews, like notice or invite or yeah, just see who is coming in because we have experienced it so magically, and that is our intention for you as well to just know this love and support and guidance is available when we can tap in to this cocoon of infinite potential, love, and mystery.
Yeah, and just we might never finish this presentation, but I just wanted to add on to also make mention of Ryan Nielsen and his bringing in the moss and this kind of flipping the ecosystem on its head, the way that the moss grows, like to understand it's not just one way. So as you listen to these stories and you listen to Kathleen and I talk, like think of the moss, listen to Ryan's talk about how the moss grows. It's kind of upside down. And actually, rather than rooting down, it's opening up to the sky and it has its own kind of system of receiving through opening up to the sky with the roots just above the rock or the tree stump, whatever it's growing on. And there's something I think there's something important to know that there's no one way to be in emergence. And that's what we hope we've gifted you in these conversations.
And I just have to come in back. Oh my gosh, this is ping pong. But we must mention in Michael Mead's interview, he says that what he calls a pre-Freudian slip and says metaphor instead of metamor. But this is so key, like in Lisa's interview, she talks about the metamorphosis of a seed, and we have so many of the caterpillar and the dragonfly, and just so many metaphors. This is metamorphosis. It truly is. So, yeah, what metaphors come through for you as you go through this summit? And I think I'm done.
Yeah, we're done. We're done. Much love to everybody and happy listening. And let us know how you go as you're listening. We'd love to know. We'd love to hear.
Yes, please do get involved in the chat and the message us, yeah, through YouTube. Just we would love to have this be a co-creation because that is essentially what has made this so magical.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kathleen.